Hi you guys, and welcome to our next unit. For this project, we're going to be using watercolor pencils to create a still life painting. So in this project, you guys can choose to either paint a close-up of a still life arrangement of objects, or you could choose to do a close-up of a flower or something from nature. Let's go ahead and get started with some basic vocabulary terms. A still life is a work of art depicting inanimate, commonplace objects which are either natural or man-made. Shape is a term used for a two-dimensional enclosed area created through lines, textures, colors, or values. Form is a three-dimensional object or composition. As you guys know, each of our projects corresponds with one of the elements of design, and this project goes along with texture. So texture is the perceived surface quality of a work of art. Here are just a few examples of some textures that you might see in real life and choose to recreate in your still life. Next, let's talk about some relevant artists for this project. So Georgia O'Keeffe is a female American artist known for her paintings of close-up flowers and desert landscapes. This is a photograph of her right here, so you might recognize her. She is originally from New Mexico, and she became one of the first famous female American artists, and she really had a fascination with flowers. Most of her paintings are of close-up flowers, almost to the point where you can't quite tell what it is. On the other hand, she does have some more realistic, recognizable still lifes and landscapes from the Southwest as well. Now, Audrey Flack is still alive today, and she is a contemporary artist whose choice of subject matter for her still life paintings added a socio-political dimension to the photorealist movement. And essentially what that means is that we've talked about photorealism before, and that's definitely something that she tries to achieve in her work, making things look as realistic and lifelike as possible. And within the past 50 years or so, she has really taken a liking to still life paintings in particular. You guys might have heard the term vanitas, and that is the term that has been around since about the 1600s, and it originated from the Netherlands. And it means it's objects symbolic of mortality and the meaninglessness of worldly pleasures. Now, if you'll flip to the next page of your workbook, let's talk about some technique terms. So when using watercolor pencils, a flat wash is an even wash of one consistent value, and a graded wash is a wash in which the value gradually changes from dark to light, otherwise known as ombre. Glazing means to apply thin, transparent washes of one color over another color. And lifting is a technique for removing paint from a surface with a brush, paper towel, or tissue in order to correct mistakes, develop textures, create highlights, or change values. Alright, so this is going to be exercise 1 in your workbook. So go ahead and grab a small piece of watercolor paper, draw 2 boxes on it, and write flat wash and graded wash. Your flat wash, you're just going to apply an even coat of watercolor pencil, dry first, and then you're going to grab a container with water and a paintbrush. Dip your paintbrush in the water just a little bit, and then go ahead and spread your watercolor around in that flat wash so that it's all one value. Now your graded wash, you're going to color a little bit darker on one side of your box, and it's going to get a little bit lighter as you go down the box. Essentially what you're aiming for is an ombre effect here. So again, first you're going to use the watercolor pencil to apply the color, and then you're going to get a paintbrush wet with just a little bit of water. Start with a lighter area, and then you're going to gradually get darker and darker. You might have to go back through a few times and pull the color wherever you want it to go. So just keep in mind that you're going for an ombre effect here in your graded wash area. Now for exercise 2, go ahead and grab another small piece of watercolor paper, label it lifting, apply some watercolor pencil and wet it with a brush, and then while it's still wet, grab a paper towel or a tissue and lift up a little bit of that color. after you're done with your exercises, go ahead and flip to the next page in your workbook, which talks about the steps and requirements and planning options for this project. So you have a couple different options for your project. You can either create your own still life arrangement with objects that are meaningful to you, different food, flowers, sports equipment, musical instruments, art supplies, books, and photograph it, or you can find something similar on Google. Or your second option would be to take a close-up photograph of an object from nature, such as a flower, a bouquet of flowers, a seashell, a pine cone, etc. Or you can find a photograph on Google. If you want something close up, you can use the term macro, M-A-C-R-O, and that'll give you close-up photographs such as this one. So this macro photograph of a pine cone is the one that I chose for my example for you guys. So that is what is coming up next. To start off, you're going to want to sketch out your entire design with graphite pencil first. Use like an HB pencil or something kind of right in the middle of the spectrum. After you have your design sketched out, go ahead and use watercolor pencils to lightly color the lightest values in your artwork. So remember, you're going to be adding layers of color to this in order to build up those dark areas. After you use the watercolor pencil to color in certain areas, go over it with a slightly wet paintbrush to hydrate your watercolor and spread it around. Remember that watercolor is all about layering or glazing, since we don't have white paint to create highlights and light values. So you're going to have to go back and forth between applying watercolor pencil and water until your values are built up and get darker. But make sure that you wait for each layer to dry completely before adding more watercolor pencil. Alright you guys, now it's your turn to go ahead and do those exercises and then search for some photographs or take your own photographs of your still life arrangement. And go ahead and get started. Have fun!